Hello, I'm Michelle Harding, a board member of Harriet's House, and I want to first welcome you and especially thank you for being with us today for Harriet's House's very first annual Freedom Brunch. At Harriet's House, it is our passion to see women set free from human trafficking and to establish safe havens for them to heal, to hope, and to go on and flourish in life. Some of you may not even be aware of what human trafficking is, how vast it is, and yet even how close it is to you. I know I didn't. My journey in the fight and advocacy for human trafficking victims and survivors began 15 years ago. In November of 2005, when I took a group of young people to a youth conference near Rochester, New York. When we entered the foyer of the church, there were representatives from youth ministries, colleges, foreign missions, all around us. But there was one in the corner that caught my eye. And I don't remember the name of the organization, but I'll never forget the images. The images of men and women and children being beaten and begging on street corners. Children who looked to be only 5 or 6 years old, carrying stacks of bricks on each shoulder as far as their little fingers could reach. Women and little girls were chained to beds. And I remember the flood of emotion. I remember the anger, and I remember the outrage, and I remember the overwhelm and the fear and even the sadness. And my heart just broke for what I was seeing. I remember the wash of nausea as I realized the absolute shock of what I was seeing. How is this happening? Why isn't something being done? You see, I had awakened that day. And the reality was that slavery was not something that ended a couple of 100 years ago, but that it was alive, and not only that, but it was flourishing around the world. Over the years, that youth group and I discussed human trafficking. We prayed against it. We prayed for the survivors. We gave finances anytime the opportunity presented itself, but somehow it was still over there, somewhere far away. It's still about red light districts in Europe or brothels in Thailand and third world countries. That is until July 7th of 2010, when the atrocity of human trafficking struck very close to home. We had heard the news that 2 men had been arrested for operating a brothel right here in Easton, right up the road from the church that I pastored, literally less than 1 mile away from where I worshiped. We heard of women being held against their will, physically beaten, abused, and forced to have sex for another's profit. One of the victims, who was rescued and found chained to her bed, was only 17 years old. And suddenly, human trafficking wasn't something that happened hundreds of miles away or just in big cities. This was happening here, and it was happening in plain sight. Since that day, some amazing people have stepped up. They've mobilized, and they've worked to bring awareness and education throughout our region to shine the light on the darkness of human trafficking and help engage others to join the fight to end modern day slavery. And you see, that's exactly what human trafficking is: modern day slavery. Its legal definition is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. Sex trafficking occurs when someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to cause a commercial sex act with an adult, or causes a minor to commit a commercial sex act. However, it's important to know that when it comes to anyone under the age of 18, there does not have to be proof of force, fraud, or coercion to be considered human trafficking. Human trafficking at its basest form is the buying and selling of men, women, and children. It's the horrendous act of someone taking another's power and subjecting them against their will and forcing them to do whatever they want for personal gain and profit. And as a matter of fact, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. And it's because the criminals know that human trafficking has little risk but high rewards. Drugs, arms, guns can only be sold once, while a sex trafficked victim can be sold multiple times a day. Another reason that it continues to increase is because of the unlimited access of the internet. Social media and technology are fueling this worldwide growth in human trafficking and it's making the buying and selling of people as easy as the click of a button. Social media, for example, it is used to groom children or lure young people into dangerous situations. Grooming is the process used to identify a potential victim, and then through various forms of manipulation, including gifts and attention, the trafficker builds trust with them and is then able to take advantage of their target. Websites such as the notorious and now defunct Backpage.com, men, women, and children were available for purchase with sexual acts as their product to sell. These websites make it easier than ever for traffickers to sell victims and make forms of payment nearly untraceable. There are millions enslaved around the world. You know, it's believed that at least 100,000 children in America are trafficked a year. There are thousands of cases reported to the National Human Trafficking Hotline each year. And you know, since that day in Easton, Maryland on July 7th, 2010, there have been more than 40 cases of sex trafficking reported in the news on the Delmarva Peninsula. Among those reports are the story of a young mentally handicapped woman who met a gentleman at a library who formed a relationship. She came to believe that he was her boyfriend, but he then forced her to have sex and then sold her to others in this community. The story of a 15-year-old girl held in a hotel, forced heroin, and then sold for money and drugs. And then there's the notorious story of a sex ring run out of a hotel in which victims were held against their wills and forced to take heroin and forced to have sex with multiple people every day. This isn't happening somewhere out there. It isn't happening somewhere in a third world country. It's only happening in those places. It's happening here. It's happening in our communities, and it's growing. Harriet's house is named for the great conductor of the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman. She shined a light in the midst of the darkness of slavery and led many to freedom. And like our namesake, Harriet's house is a dream to see every slave set free, to see people once held in darkness come into the light and arise from the ashes of the past and step in to a hopeful future. And like her, we need our fellow abolitionists to come forward, to help make the way, and to continue to shine the light of hope. Thank you so much.
Hello, and welcome. Welcome to the First Annual Freedom Brunch hosted by Harriet's House. We are super excited that you have taken the opportunity to join us today. My name is Shay Lewis Cisco, and I will be your host for this amazing event. First, we want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to each of you that have opened up your homes, your businesses, and your churches to sponsor this event. If it were not for our sponsors, we would not be able to have this event today. So before we get into all of the details, I just want to outline what we will be discussing today. So today you will learn about the need for services for victims of human trafficking and exploitation, and how Harriet's House currently fills this need. Currently, there are no residential services offered on the Eastern Shore, which is why we are so excited to share the vision for Harriet's House with you today. So, you want to make sure that you stay to the very end to hear some exciting news, as well as ways and opportunities to partner to help serve women in our community.
Although we would rather be with you face to face, we are so happy you are joining us for this virtual event. In 2008, I was awakened to the topic of human trafficking, but I thought it was an issue that only happened in other countries. I felt God place it on my heart to do something about this issue. I spent years taking short-term missions trips, helping others in third world countries. 2 of the trips that I took were specifically to work with women in aftercare programs who had escaped human trafficking. As I learned more about this issue, I began to realize the need to help women in the United States. And from that, Harriet's House was born. In 2017, my husband and I founded Harriet's House. And as you can imagine, the name Harriet comes from Harriet Tubman. She was a woman of faith and relied completely on God. She fought slavery in her time, and we are fighting human trafficking in our time, which is considered modern-day slavery. And just like Harriet, we are extending our hand to offer hope and healing to those who are ready to be free.
Many believe that human trafficking doesn't happen in this area. But we invite you to learn about the problem, to hear our plan for the solution, and be a part of the provision.
Hello, my name is Ann Holliday. I am co-chair of the Eastern Shore Human Trafficking Task Force, along with my colleague Ed Thomas, and I am delighted to be able to share with you today. I actually have been engaged with the anti-trafficking work for the past 15 years, starting in the DC area, where, amongst other things, I co-hosted 2 conferences at Georgetown University, one at the School of Foreign Service and one at the Business School. The one in the School of Foreign Service, we were really working with diplomats to educate them on what was going on in terms of human trafficking, mainly sex trafficking, in their area of the world. And at the Business School, which was a number of years later, we wanted to talk to businessmen and about how it impacts their businesses, and it certainly does. So that's a little bit of my background. I ended up here on the Eastern Shore of Maryland about 7 years ago. And prior to that, I had met a local businessman who got interested in human trafficking because one day he woke up and read in the local paper, the Star Democrat in Easton, the little Norman Rockwell village-like town, that there was a bust on Dover Street, right in the heart of his town that he grew up in and now was raising his family. And Brad Hill basically said, not in my town. He had heard of human trafficking, of sex trafficking, but like many of us, had thought it was recruiting particularly young girls from overseas, promising them jobs, bringing them here, and actually trafficking them rather than fulfilling the job promise. But he learned that that wasn't just the case. Yes, in that case, there was a bust. It was international girls that were being brought from New York City to Easton. But he learned as he started researching, that it was also a local problem, a domestic problem, and decided to start a task force, which became the Eastern Shore Human Trafficking Task Force. Brad decided he wanted to educate the community. Obviously, he didn't know anything about it, and he figured that most of the people didn't know anything about it. So he convened groups of people to just talk about it, to research what is going on in this area. And then he formed committees that would once they became educated, wanted to educate and bring awareness to the community through all kinds of groups, through churches. The faith community has played a big role, through civic groups, through schools. There actually are curricula being developed to get into schools today, and this is a big part of what we've gotten behind. Our mission is to support those groups that are actually doing something positive, to make a positive impact, to combat this evil in our 9 counties. And a lot of that is through education and awareness and creating those opportunities. We partnered with the police. We have partnered with the Maryland State Task Force. We are very big on prevention, which is also just supporting groups that are going into schools and the like to educate young people what this looks like today. And that's a huge part of it, as well as doctors, the medical community. So if the community can learn what is really going on in their community, learn what it looks like, then they can play a part in this. And we've seen this several times where just regular citizens have been in a massage parlor, have been in a home as a realtor and seen something look very unusual and went to law enforcement and had something done about it. So if the community gets educated, then we have a much bigger chance of making a big impact. The area, the committee that I think has people who are so passionate about, which is understandable, is victim services. I mean, we want to help these young men and women who have been brought into this horrific, basically slavery in our time. It is definitely modern day slavery. And so we all want to help these victims. But that's where the rub has been, is we have wonderful groups like For All Seasons and the Rape Crisis Center, and they're doing incredible jobs in terms of mental health needs and so forth. But what we need, desperately need, are victim services that are hands-on and particularly residential. These young men and women need a place they can feel safe. And I think they would be willing to come forward if they had a place that they would feel safe. And so enter Julie and Jim Crane, who've had, as you heard their story, who've had this passion and have gone overseas with this passion, and now bringing this passion and this calling to this community to establish Harriet's House. And I'm so grateful for the calling that God has put on their life. We have had a couple of groups in this area that have wanted to start a residential home for victims, and it doesn't seem to have worked out. But these groups have come across the bridge and don't know the area as Jim and Julie know the area. And so now, and also we're sending victims across the bridge when they need residential care. And we need a home in our community that can care really for the least of these. And so I'm just delighted to be able to partner with Jim and Julie and Harriet's House. The Eastern Shore Human Trafficking Task Force is delighted to have them as a part of our task force. And I'm just delighted to be able to be here and promote them. I just ask each of you to open your hearts. There are many ways. I know they will talk about volunteering, but I'll be very honest. They need your funding, and they need you to tell your friends. And there are many, as I love the idea of this virtual brunch that they're putting on. It's such a creative way and a fun way to gather friends together and hear about Harriet's House. And I encourage all of us to think about creative ways that we can support and promote this group. So thank you for having me today, and thank you for being a part of this virtual fundraiser.
In September 2019, we opened a drop-in center here in Cambridge. This is a resource center for women, where women in the community can drop in to receive emergency food, toiletry items, learn life skills, and get connected to other resources in the community and get targeted help if we see indicators of exploitation and human trafficking. We have served over 50 clients and have had over 250 touch points with the women who have come in for services. We have plans to increase our services as we move forward, and specifically to offer a support group for women who have been sexually abused with creative workshops that will promote healing. Currently, our drop-in center is 100% volunteer run, which allows us to keep costs down. We do foresee the need for paid staff as we expand our programming and services in the future.
Hi, I'm Shamir McKenzie, and I'm excited to speak to you on behalf of Harriett's House. While I hold many titles, and they are a lot, I would like to introduce myself today with the title that I value the most. Hi, I'm Shamir McKenzie, and I am a human being. I love to introduce myself as a human being because oftentimes when we talk about the issue of human trafficking, we totally forget that people are at the center of this global phenomenon. So yes, I'm here to talk to you about human trafficking, an issue that I didn't read about in a book or watched on television or researched. Human trafficking was my life. My life for 18 months to what I describe as severe torture in every sense of the word torture. This global phenomenon that is plaguing our nation, that is plaguing my community, that's plaguing your community must stop. But today I am here to give you a message of hope. I'm here to let you know that there is hope for survivors of human trafficking, and you have a role to play in this fight. You have a role to play in this message of hope. Human trafficking is happening right here in Maryland, right here on the Eastern Shore. And how can we stand aside and look? How can we stand aside and know that this is happening in our communities and not do anything about it? Maryland it's in a unique spot. There's a lot of things about Maryland that attracts traffickers to our state. Did you know that Maryland is considered one of the top 5 richest states in the United States? In fact, in 2018, Maryland was the richest state in the United States. Traffickers go where the money is. And we have money here in Maryland, believe it or not. We also hold an international airport. We have casinos. We have large conferences here in Maryland. We have Interstate 95 that connects to neighboring states. Traffickers go where the money is. And so, as we are here in Maryland, if traffickers are coming here, we must know that they are also victims right here in our state. Victims who are in need of services. Victims who are in need or is looking for someone to provide assistance, to walk alongside them on this path of recovery. See, I'm here to talk to you about this issue. And yes, I share that I was once a victim, a longtime survivor, but now a liberator who has broken free from the chains of our past and is determined to make a difference in the lives of others. And I know what it's like coming out of that dark world of human trafficking, stepping into the unknown when my hopes and dreams were shattered because I trusted the wrong person. But I'm here today because I have supported people. I had support by individuals. And when I said support, I'm not just talking about one individual. I'm talking about a collective group of people that came alongside me. I'm talking about survivors who have paved the way. I'm talking about organizations who have provided me with job opportunities and internships. I'm talking about organizations similar to Harriet's House who offered me services. I received housing, therapeutic services, which includes counseling to unpack this trauma that I endured, life skills classes and support groups. Those are some of the services that Harriet's House will be providing. Right now, Harriet's House is serving as a drop-in center with hope to open a shelter. And I don't even like using that term shelter, because what Harriet's House is looking to provide is truly a home where survivors can be comforted, where survivors can feel safe, where survivors know that there are people there that are cheering them on, where survivors know that they can get the help they need to trot on that path to recovery. Now, recovery isn't easy. And like I said, I'm here because of a collective effort. And so today I'm asking you to join me in supporting Harriet's House. I'm asking you to join me in whatever way you can, whether that's financially, because it does take money to operate such an organization, whether it's through your skills, gifts, and talents, whether it's volunteering, whether it's through non-perishable items. Join me in supporting Harriet's House. Join me in this fight against modern day slavery. Join me in this fight against human trafficking. Now, like I said, we've been talking about this issue of human trafficking, and if you're not a law enforcement officer, a judge, or a lawyer, you may not even know the definition of trafficking, but I'm here to simplify it for you. Human trafficking is the exploitation of human beings for someone else's profit. Here we are in 2020, the 21st century, where we say slavery is abolished under the 13th Amendment, but people are still being bought and sold right before our eyes. It's time for us to rise up. It's time for us to do something. We can no longer stand aside and allow this to happen. We can no longer stand aside and know that human trafficking is happening in our communities and just have a conversation about it at a dinner table. We need to join forces with organizations like Harriet's House. And we need to send a message to traffickers that human trafficking is not welcomed in Maryland. We need to send a message to traffickers that people are watching, we are looking, and we're ready to take action. Now, I'm not saying you should be law enforcement and go out there and if you see something, get involved in a tussle with traffickers. What I'm saying, if you see something, do something. Report it to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And that number is 888-37-37-888. Now, I know that sounds like a off number, but believe me, all the digits are there. So it's 888-37-37-888. The number again is 888-37-37-888. People, we're talking about lives. We are talking about human beings. And that is why I introduced myself as Shamir McKenzie, a human being. Because I believe in the aggregate. As a society, we no longer place value in human beings. If I was to come to you and ask, what is one thing you value? You would say, you value your family, you value your education, you value your job, you value your faith. And very rarely do I hear people say they value life. When we talk about this issue of human trafficking, we're talking about lives, lives that are being destroyed. And I can tell you, the physical part is easy. The scars that I endured physically have healed. But what takes a very long time, and even though I've been out of this life now for 14 years, I still struggle with the psychological harm that was done to me. The physical scars, they heal. The psychological scars remain for a lifetime. And this is why Harriet's House is important. This is why it's important to have organizations in our community like Harriet's House. Organizations that can provide this avenue of hope for survivors, so survivors can start dreaming again, so survivors can go confidently after those goals, so survivors can begin to believe in themselves again after being told by their traffickers that they're nothing and treated less than human beings. I know Harriet's House will be providing that avenue of hope for survivors. So I ask that you join me today. Join me in supporting Harriet's House so that we can have a better community, a better America. I thank you.
Our ultimate goal is to have a residential program that will provide long-term care for women who have been sexually exploited. Women will receive comprehensive care emotionally, spiritually, and educationally. Resources will be made available for residents to get their GED, continuing education, and learn life skills such as money management, social skills, cooking, cleaning, gardening, and self-care. This will be done with a trauma-informed care approach with an emphasis on individual, group, and other therapy outlets. As you have learned, there are no services here on the Eastern Shore, and it is our desire to fill that need through Harriet's House.
Hi everyone, my name is Kim Chekai, and I'm the director of the Shelter Mentorship Program for the Samaritan Women Institute for Shelter Care. The Samaritan Women began in 2007 as one of the only long-term residential care programs in the United States for victims of commercial sexual exploitation. Over the years, we expanded our services to include short-term stabilization, a graduate program, a schoolhouse, and on-site vocational enterprise. In 2018, the Lord began to open a new focus for the Samaritan Women by encouraging us to take what we've learned doing this work and to begin to teach others. Our goal is to address the national crisis that's happening right now. Currently, there are only 177 open and active shelter programs specifically to serve victims of commercial sexual exploitation. We've all heard the stats of thousands of victims that are out there waiting for assistance. We are excited that Harriet's House was one of the very first organizations to answer the call of this national crisis by joining the 2019 cohort of shelter mentees. Julie and her team have completed over 220 hours of classroom instruction and received a binder full of resources and protocols to assist them in implementation of preparing to open their shelter program. As part of the training, Harriet's House had the benefit of learning from experts across the nation, from various residential agencies. We were blessed to bring in adjunct faculty from other successful programs so mentees could learn from a variety of approaches and learn from the forerunners in this space. Harriet's House is stepping into their commitment to quality services for victims with excellence as they continue to grow through their outreach efforts and their passion to pursue shelter care and being met with quality planning and preparation. It's hard serving any needs-based population, whether that be homeless, addiction, victims of childhood sexual abuse, those in destructive relationships, criminal history, and so much more. Each can be difficult in their very own way, but the distinction that human trafficking survivors bring is that often they have a combination of all these challenges. At the Samaritan Women, 94% of our survivors were victims of childhood sexual abuse. 87% grew up in substance abuse households. 70% had no father figures. 58% had been incarcerated. Most have left school by 8th grade. The list of challenges goes on and on. We've come to know Julie and the heartbeat of Harriet's house, and we are so encouraged by the impact they're already making right now and the impact they will make on the next generation of shelter care. By each one of you being a part and donating to Harriet's house, you are helping survivors be guided out of their present darkness and into the glory of God. We are so grateful for the commitment that you are making to serving survivors. Thank you for supporting Harriet's house, and thank you for being hope to survivors.
As you can see, Harriet's House is doing some amazing work in the community. And the goal of today's event is to raise $300,000. So we encourage you to make a faith and financial investment in order to partner with Harriet's House to continue to change the lives of those women who have been trafficked and exploited. All monies will be used to further the mission for Harriet's House. We ask that you at this moment take the opportunity to fill out the partner form. And if you do not have it, it is in the link down below. And we want you to take a minute to fill that form out. But more importantly, stay tuned. Make sure you come back because we will be hearing a special announcement from our founders, Miss Julie and Mr. Jim Crane. So you want to stay right there and come back so you do not miss this special announcement.
Now we want to share with you some exciting news. Right now, we are pursuing a home that a donor has so graciously agreed to donate. We are in the last part of the process and expect to have a final answer by December. With this comes the need to get this home ready for residents. A contractor has estimated the repairs will cost $30,000. These costs can be alleviated with the help of volunteers.
If you would like to take a part in refurbishing, furnishing, providing household items, please let us know. Many hands will be needed.
We have an upcoming volunteer orientation that has been scheduled via Zoom. You can join us for this volunteer orientation to get ready to be a volunteer. Won't you consider linking arms with us and helping in the fight? Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual event. We truly couldn't do it without you.
So we want to say thank you again for giving us your time, for spending the day with us to learn more about Harriet House's vision and mission. We encourage you to complete the partner form in the link below to enter into a drawing for door prizes that will be announced on November the 14th. So you want to complete the form, even if financially you do not have to give today, so that you can be entered into the drawing and you will be notified by November the 14th. So we just want to say thank you, and we want to close in prayer just because we want to pray for you, your family, as well as continue to keep Harriet's House lifted in prayer as they continue to provide a great service to our community. So as we look to God, Father, we thank you. We thank you for every person watching. We thank you for every person that have partnered with Harriet's House today. We thank you for the founders, Julia and Jim Crane. We thank you for all of the work that you have given them to do as it relates to this mission, this vision. So Lord, we ask that you would continue to touch the heart of those supporters to continue to give into this mission, into this vision, that Harriet's House may be able to be expanded beyond the borders of the Eastern Shore. So Lord, we just ask that you continue to allow us to do what it is that you have called and purposed us to do, to help those victims that have been trafficked and have been exploited, so that they may too find safety, not just in Harriet's House, but also in you, God. And we thank you for taking the time to learn about Harriet's House and how you can partner with us. We appreciate your time, your generous donations, as well as your prayer. Have an amazing day.